For today, I thought we'd take a look at some boxes. I know, right? What could possibly be more exciting than that? But to be honest, I'm not really joking. When I took graphic design, some of my favorite projects usually revolved around package design. And after college, I was fortunate enough to even work on some candy packaging, which, by the way, if you live in Canada, you probably have seen in stores during the run-up to Easter or Halloween. But anyways, the point is that I'm going to show you some of my favorite, in fact, 5 of my favorite Neptunia limited editions, and then dive into the reasons why. I want to talk about some design choices and elements in a way I haven't done so before, so hopefully it'll end up being an interesting video. Of course, I can only talk about LEs that I actually own, but fortunately, I do have almost every single one, with the exception of Rebirth 1, which is very rare and now expensive, and also that Rebirth Trilogy pack, which has all the Rebirth games on Steam, and that comes with stuff that exists in other limited editions already anyways, so I think I've got an interesting and varied set of NEP limited editions to show you. In fact, they all don't quite conform to what a usual Neptunia limited edition is. Some feature really unique items, unconventional form factors, or other design elements like, let's say, color palette or visual themes. I think it makes sense to discuss what a regular limited edition of the NEP series even looks like. Well, there's like 2 eras, if you will, at least in North America, the NISA and Idea Factory era. NIS America handled publishing rights right at the start. All the PS3 games and also the first spin-off. When you look at them, there's actually no real coherent theme, honestly. The first limited edition can be debated as not being a real LE, plus it follows an NIS America specific format in terms of box design and packaging. Mark II is very much in line with what a lot of LEs look like in Japan, except it's devoid of branding and copy. And then Victory for some reason came in a tin which had a second tin in it, yet it holds nothing. And then strangely enough, Producing Perfection ended up being the first example of the style of box that future Idea Factory releases would end up having. Thankfully, nothing else from that game carried over. So the regular kind of Neptunia box is this flat but tall and wide box. The inside is compartmentalized by these layers of carton, with each layer having around 1 or 2 items. Usually that would be the game, soundtrack, and then an art book. Rebirth 2 and 3 as well as a few spin-offs use this design specifically. They even have the exact same thickness, but after a while Idea Factory decided to apply some variation to that basic design by altering dimensions and types of paper or carton being used. Most of the things we'll look at today fall outside of that standard we just talked about, and then there's also a bit of an exception because there's a Japanese limited edition, which we're going to take a look at, which conveniently allows me to talk about a few things related to that. So now I'll show you my 5 favorite Neptunia limited editions. I'll be honest, the order is a bit arbitrary except for the first one. Not that it really matters, but just so you know. Cyber Dimension Neptunia 4 Goddesses Online. This one's interesting. It's quite a big box and it's a horizontal layout, which is a bit unique. Or I guess, landscape? Well, you know what I mean. There's actually a number of other unique things I want to point out here. We've got the goddesses in their 4 Goddesses Online outfits, which is unique to the game. Instead of being super vibrant and punchy like a lot of the other LEs, the colors are more muted and pastel-like, and there's like a soft quality to everything. I think that works well with the whole heavenly look. I like how they also used a yellow or golden sky instead of just blue. It somehow manages to look vibrant and impactful without using saturated colors or high contrast. The actual texture of the box is kind of strange. It's soft to the touch, which you wouldn't exactly expect. It's a matte finish, and normally those feel a little bit abrasive, but that's not the case. The box on the inside has a stained glass design depicting various scenes and characters. The more simplistic style looks similar to the stained glass windows in Zelda The Wind Waker. I'm not sure if that's intentional, but it does seem likely, especially once you see the triangular elements. To have something so detailed like this in a usually overlooked area of the box is quite nice. The inside is laid out rather conventionally using the layered divider method. The fantasy theme continues on the other items. Somewhat unique is this Neptune USB stick, which never worked for me. You have to rip her head off to reveal the USB bit. It is a fun thing to display on a shelf, that is, once you put her head back on. So yeah, I don't really care about the USB part too much. All of the modern and sci-fi looking designs you'd find in normal NEP games are absent here. And it's actually kind of amusing to think about that a standard and not that unique RPG style looks somehow unique for this franchise. I guess it shows you that it's all about context. Now it's on to Hyperdimension Neptunia Victory. Not the NA version, but a Japanese limited edition. Obviously, JDM LEs come in many different shapes and sizes, like they do here, but since LEs are much more common over there in general, there does seem to be various standardized formats. And one of them is this rectangular shape that is slightly larger and quite a bit thicker than a standard game case. What I like about this is mostly what's included inside, as it's a great example of the things Japan often gets but we don't. The box illustration is quite different to what the North American LE got, which by the way is that metal lunchbox thing I mentioned earlier. Let's have a look inside. Again, the artwork is different on the game, full color manual is inside, which is pretty cool, but the coolest things are probably the figures and the drama CD. The figures are small, but they look pretty good for their size. They're towards the cutesy side of the spectrum, but aren't as deformed as something like Nendoroids would be. It would be nice to have more figures and LEs in the West. I think if they offered a more expensive limited edition with figures, especially higher quality scale figures, and then limit them to, let's say, a few hundred or a few thousand, then that could probably work out. Because then you'd get the choice of, an LE without them for, so it's not that expensive. But there will be other people who, of course, want to dish out the extra money to get the figures. There's a drama CD in here. That's something we are probably never going to get in the West. Usually they have, extra lore or tidbits of interesting information or details, but given the extra cost of having that dubbed in English does make it cost prohibitive. Not to mention, not every series has an English dub to begin with. I would like to see maybe a transcript to follow along to. Something like that would be pretty cool, but I don't know, maybe that's too niche even for a niche game. I will say this weird contraption here isn't perhaps the most practical thing though. It does have a little manga on it, which is also something I'd like to see included in limited editions here. But why is it why is it on this thing to begin with? It's all a bit weird and cumbersome to handle. But overall, I like this limited edition. It's a bit different than what we get, and it's certainly quirky, I guess. Something interesting to note is that NISA released a few limited editions with this type of box. Mark II is an example there. I really like the illustrations they use and how clean it is and everything, and it would have been in this video. But I figured the Japanese Victory LE was a better way to touch on some Japanese-only items. And besides, Mark II's items are just a little bit standard, I guess, and there's recycled art and all that. But anyways, I also want to mention that Atelier Meruru also used this box design, but I'm not sure how long NISA kept this design after Idea Factory took over nepping duties. Mega Dimension Neptunia V2. This one's interesting. It's one of the smallest LEs in the series, yet it comes with some of the biggest stuff. And yes, there's stuff that does not fit into the box. Specifically, that PS4 skin, which, by the way, doesn't work with Slim or Pro models. Also, there's an Umio plushie, which again, isn't in the box. Despite this not particularly great attribute, I still really like this limited edition. I like how compact it is, even if some tenants needed evicting for this level of compactness. But there's also some really neat details, like, firstly, the embossed design on the illustration. I think that adds a really nice amount of visual depth. Having the shading, change as you move the box around is a cool effect. It's surprising how good it looks over just a normal flat image. The second thing is the color choice. Normally you'd see blues and purples dominating the scene, but orange is a complementary color after all, so it fits very well to the blue that we normally see. And it's also Uzume's color obviously, so that all works out. We are looking at a sleeve by the way, so that means it's removable, and what's underneath looks totally different. It's Nep in her next form. I really like it, it's clean and uncluttered, and gives off a completely different feel to the other cover image. The orange sleeve is cute, fun, and energetic, while this one's more moody, sexy, elegant, and modern. And the great thing is that you can choose to display it with or without the sleeve. There's also the usual art book and soundtrack. Everything looks quite good, and it's also worth mentioning that the cover art works very well with the translucent blue used on the PS4 cases. Certainly better than it does in most cases. Neptunia Virtual Stars has a very unique limited edition. It comes with a record. That's pretty much a first when it comes to the series. It fits quite well since the theme of the game is virtual idols and virtual YouTubers. That being said, not all VTubers are idols, but that's another topic. There's some mixed opinions about this game. I think Virtual Stars was created a bit too early. In fact, the development started before the VTuber boom happened, so the game isn't as good as it could have been story-wise in my opinion. But anyway, we're looking at the limited edition right now. The box itself is similar to Four Goddesses Online in the fact that it's horizontal, but it's all a bit littler all the way around. The art has a very saturated and vivid look. It is quite busy, but I don't think it's cluttered. You can still see who's who and what's what. The ever-present level dividers are again present and doing their thing in silence. The items inside are quite varied in design. There isn't much recycled art, which is something that plagues a few other LEs in the series. I think I mentioned Mark II earlier. Sound spectrum analyzer bars are used as a design element here and there. I like the combination of black and darker colors on the character uniforms and how they contrast with the sky blue background that is used on a lot of the art. That way it can be very contrasty without going down the more moody route, I guess. And I think that fits well with the game. It gives the game a bit of a visual identity in its color palette. That's actually usually how I differentiate between the different LEs. I've got like a shelf. When I just look inside from farther away, I can usually spot what's what just by the color combinations, rather than picking out who the characters are at the front or what the name is. The highlight is the LP, as you might imagine. I really like it. I know some people didn't want that to be included, or more like they wanted an option to not have it there because, you know, they didn't want it, didn't have a record player or whatever. Price obviously being an issue too. But as a package like this, I really like it. Just having a record included is good enough already, but they decided to make it pink, which is a little bit more above and beyond, as you might imagine. And now we're on to the number 1 spot. I did say that, you know, places 5 to 2 aren't really ordered, but this is going to be definitely my number 1, at least at the moment. And that is Super Neptunia RPG. I really like this limited edition quite a bit. In a way, it's not really that unique when it comes to content, but I feel it's the most coherent looking LE of the series. All the items are distinct, yet they harmonize very well visually, and that's especially visible if you display the entire set together like this. There's a mystical and fairy tale-like look, which is well applied across all the items, and I think it just looks good like this if you have it just standing like this. The main box looks like Histoire in box form, though this box is a bit thicker than in-game Histy, to be honest. But its purpose is to house everything, so yeah, that makes sense why it's that size. That's already something I like about this. Unlike some other LEs in the series, everything actually fits inside this box, and nothing is just dumped loosely into the shipping thing there. Shipping box. Inside is a Podingo plushie, a character from the game, and the game case itself, and the actual LE box, which holds the rest of the LE elements like the steel case, art book, and soundtrack. I think the colors of everything are very well chosen and work together pretty good. The art book, like the big box, utilizes Histoire's purple book/tome design. The soundtrack makes use of the game's excellent hand-drawn backgrounds and borrows the borders from the big box. It has a cool, dreamy atmosphere to the overall look. The game cover has Neptune in the center, with many of the game's characters right behind her. It conveys a lot of movement and activity, and I like how they managed to keep Nep at the forefront by making her the largest character in the illustration. The reverse cover art is my favorite, and it's actually the same or almost the same as the one found on the smaller main box. The main difference being the border. It's the image where Nep and Co are in their HDD uniforms. The thing I specifically like about this is how Neptune/Purple Heart steps over the border like she's stepping out of the illustration. It's like she wants to pull you into the adventure. The box also has a bunch of cool details like, you know, on the sides and the insides there. I like that stuff, and it's almost as cool as the stained glass design from Four Goddesses Online, but not quite. So yeah, those are my 5 favorite Neptunia limited editions. While they often are flawed to some degree, they all have something unique to offer in the series. Like I said, Super Neptunia RPG is my favorite, and it has to do with the look it has when everything is displayed together. To me, it's just, I don't know, it just looks good, so that's why it ended up at first place. I hope you found that interesting. Let me know what your favorite limited editions are and why. Thank you to all the supporters of the channel. Some of those can be seen here on the screen. Remember, you can check out patreon.com/ysn if you want to appear on this list, watch videos before they come out, and get exclusive updates on what I'm working on. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.